So we're going to start with state updates, and then we're going to move to a presentation by the Oregon Lottery, giving us an update on what they're been up to. Then we're going to have a presentation from Tom and Jeff on fantasy sports. Then we're going to have Tom present some data that we have collected from our health analytics team here at the state around gambling diagnosis. And then we're going to end with having Jeff just do a little overview of the 5-year work plan that we've been working on that you should have seen emails regarding. Okay, and just so you know, after this webinar has concluded, the PowerPoint and any accompanying documents will be, and CEU certificates will be emailed to you, those of you that have joined us today on this webinar. Okay, so just a first state update is, as we have talked about in many of our past monthly prevention and treatment calls, the Oregon Health Authority, which is the state agency that we are a part of, has been going through a reorganization, and the Addictions and Mental Health Division, the division that PGS used to fall under, has been merged with the Medicaid Assistance Program, and now we have become a division called Health Systems Division. So just wanted you to be aware of that. We're still under the Oregon Health Authority, but we're now under a division called Health Systems. So Problem Gambling Services has been placed under the unit called Operations and Policy Unit, and we have Nicole Corbin as our direct manager, so we're really pleased about that. And so we have become part of an adult behavioral health unit. This we look at this as giving us a great opportunity to engage with others in the behavioral health field within our office, and probably better collaboration. So we see this as a great opportunity, and we'll probably be talking more about it, this reorg, and what those opportunities are as we get more information. But I just wanted to make you guys aware of our new division's name. Also, just wanted to briefly go over that I had sent an email out last week about just a transitioning of roles for myself and Roxanne, your two state staffers currently. As you're aware, we during this transition, we had lost our problem gambling treatment specialist position to our quality improvement unit as they were merging site reviews into one process. So that position has been vacated, and because we don't have a position right now, we want to make sure that treatment and prevention in our whole system is covered. So Roxanne and I have split the state up a bit, and Roxanne will remain the designated prevention specialist for all of problem gambling providers, but the state has been split. This is our new designation about which main contacts treatment will be for each of us. So if you have questions regarding treatment and you are a county that is a blue box, then you could contact Roxanne now, and then if you're a green box, you can contact me. This way we can split things up a little bit better and provide better service. Also, there's a lot of, if you have reviewed the 5-year PGS work plan, improvement plan, you will see that there's a lot of treatment-oriented stuff along with prevention and system. But Roxanne will be spending a lot of her time helping us develop those plans in more depth and also implementing what comes out of that plan. Okay, so I just wanted to make you aware of some upcoming training opportunities. We've updated our training calendar on the Oregon PGS webpage. Just wanted to make you aware that some prevention and treatment monthly calls have been canceled, such as, well, the prevention monthly calls are being rescheduled starting January to a new date and time yet to be determined. But some of the treatment calls have been canceled that occur on the same month as these all provider meetings. So we felt that we didn't need to have both calls. So just be aware of that, but you will get emails about it also. But if you want to review the new updated calendar, here's the web address for you to do that, and so that you can update your calendars. Otherwise, just wanted to let you be aware of the Focus on the Future conference, which is going to be a collaboration between Washington and Oregon this next year, 2016. These are the dates of the conference. It's going to occur in Portland, and Tom and I just went up and had a meeting with Evergreen a couple weeks ago on the site, and we're getting ready to develop the content. It should be a very good conference, so please mark your calendars with these dates to hold them, and more information will be coming out about this probably in early 2016. All right, then I just wanted to talk last about the All Provider webinar on December 10th. This is the registration for it. We have a special guest presenter, Nirmala Dar, from our Health Systems Division's Older Adult Coordinator. Dick Johnson and I sat down and met with her a few weeks back, and she shared a lot of information about this new initiative that AMH has received funding for through the legislative session last year to develop and hire older adult coordinators regionally around the state, and she's going to talk about older adult information and give us some ideas on how to outreach to that specific population. So I just want to give you a heads up about that for anybody who's interested in that topic, that she will be coming to our December 10th All Provider meeting webinar to present. And lastly, the National Council on Problem Gambling is on July 15th and 16th of next year, and it's in Tarrytown, New York. Right now, currently, a call for presentations is open until November 18th. If you want more information, this is the website you can go to determine the different suggested content that they're looking for. We just wanted to let you know that the Oregon Council on Problem Gambling is for those of you that are wanting to submit proposals and you get accepted. The Oregon Council on Problem Gambling is offering scholarships up to $1,500 for help with travel reimbursement for those presentations that are accepted. Bear in mind, this is per presentation, not presenter. So if you are interested in this and you're going to submit a proposal, we would like to know that you're going to submit a proposal and that you might need assistance through the scholarship prior to submitting your proposal, so that we can just make sure that we have it all budgeted. So if you are going to do that and are interested, if you could just email and let me know what you're going to present on, that would be great. Okay, now let me pass it over to Roxanne and have her give you an overview of prevention updates.
Great, thank you very much, Greta. Hello, everyone. Just a couple quick updates from the problem gambling prevention side. The problem gambling awareness calendars have gone to print and are going to be available for shipping out to the prevention coordinators the first part of November. If you are not a prevention coordinator and are hoping to have calendars to hand out in your community, please contact your local prevention coordinator to work with them about getting calendars so that you can then hand those out within the community. We're excited about the new calendar, and it's looking great. So one of the other things that will happen when those calendars are shipped out is the flyer for the 2017 Problem Gambling Awareness Calendar Contest will also be included, and the coordinators will then be able to start handing those out in the community to start garnering interest in being part of the calendar. The next piece is that the Oregon Problem Prevention Data System has gone live, and prevention coordinators have been, across the state, have been busily entering their plans into the system for how they'll be doing their prevention work for this next biennium, the 2015 through 17 biennium. And plans are being either approved or placed on hold at this point in time based upon if there's need for further clarification. Once the plans are approved, then programs can start entering their data against the plan that they are working on. Please keep in mind that technical assistance is available for those programs still needing assistance in developing their plan or entering data into the system. Please feel free to either email me or give me a call if you're needing assistance with the prevention data system. The other piece that we are in the process of doing, the prevention unit is going to be recording a training that will be made available in the future on how to enter the data into the Oregon Prevention Data System. So that will be a service that will help, or a recording that will then help you as you have new staff come in to be able to enter data into the system. So that's kind of where we're at right now with prevention. Lots going on, but yet not a lot as far as new updates from our past meetings. So that's it for prevention.
Thank you, Roxanne. Okay, so just quickly some treatment-specific updates. Quality improvement reports were sent out to management last week, so you should have received those. Hopefully your supervisors will share those with you. Remember that many of the measures for the performance contracting metrics and incentive payments are included in those reports, so you might want to look at how you did the first 6 months of last year, as we will be evaluating the last 6 months of this year to determine if metrics were met and if incentives will be issued. And just once again, wanted to talk about the policy statement that was sent out, I believe it was earlier in October, and regarding DSM-5 and the criteria. And you can find that policy on our Oregon PGS webpage, but just to quickly review, it's pretty much sticking with the same model we had used with the DSM-4, even though there might be a requirement for criteria, certain number of criteria to be met to have a gambling disorder here at the state office, because we are not a Medicaid covered process and we are state funded. We have decided that a criteria of 1 or 2 will be okay for us to have a person receive gambling treatment. So we will be updating our Herbert and Lewis forms in the early 2016 will be rolling that out. So look for that, as we might be changing the forms up a bit about how we capture the different criteria for the DSM-5, specifically the one that's no longer there, the legal activity. And also we might be adding some information, some new values that we might want to collect, such as veteran status and something like this, and other information like that. So more information to come on the updating of the Herbert and Lewis forms at the end of this year. But if you want to review the DSM-5 policy statement, you can find it on the website listed. Okay, so let me skip over the questions regarding the state, and we're going to hold those until the end, because I want to just be very make sure we get through this whole long agenda that we have and not shorten any of our presenters. So we're going to skip the questions for the state right now, because you can always do that via email, or we can do it at the end, or you can do it in the chat box and we'll get back to you. But let's start with the Oregon Lottery presentation. So I've unmuted Stacy, and Stacy, when you want me to advance your slide, just let me know and I'll do that for you.
Thank you, Greta. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. Okay. Good morning. I'm Stacy Shaw, Assistant Director, Sales and Marketing for the Oregon Lottery, and I'm joined today by Mark Strickler, who is in charge of all of our marketing communications and a bunch of other things. And we're gonna tag team on this. So if you could take me to the first slide, Greta. So let me start by saying that I understand we're not doing what we do to win awards, but every once in a while it's very nice. So the week before last, I attended the annual convention of the National Association of State and Provincial Lotteries, which is all the lotteries in the U.S. and in Canada. And there was a number of awards, of which we took quite a few, and we're probably most proud of the fact that we won for Best Responsible Gambling Television with our Bowling Night spot, which was developed in collaboration with Greta and Tom and a number of other folks, and we're really pleased to see that. Also, probably even more relevant to the people on this call, the Oregon Problem Gambling Resources website won Best Electronic Media. And again, very proud of the work on that. That was truly a collaboration between a big team here and a team led by Greta on the OHA side. And then also we were a finalist for Best Radio for the Spanish language spot entitled Tu Vales. So these were the only 3 responsible gambling awards in the whole program, and Oregon clearly looked really good. So we're very proud of that, and I think it really showcases the good things that can happen with collaboration and a focus on doing good work and reaching people effectively. So very happy about that. Next slide. So one of the very biggest projects that we're working on as part of our Responsible Gambling Code of Practice is developing training for our retailers, and we're starting by focusing on the frontline staff of our video lottery retailers. So we've been working on this for at least 6 months now, and we probably have another 6 months to go, but I just wanted to give you a preview. So what you see in the visual is a sort of branding for our responsible gambling program that talks about playing responsibly and uses the universally recognizable symbols of play, pause, and stop, and the tagline of keep your entertainment entertaining. So we're working with Janine Robinson, who is a very well-known expert and has done a lot of retailer and staff training in Canada, to help us do this training. And the first module will be called Responsible Gambling and You, Training for Servers, Wait Staff, and Bartenders. So we've essentially gotten it written, and we have engaged with iLearn, which I assume most of you are familiar with, working with the state. It's the state's online learning platform, and it's used primarily for people in the state to take their training, but we've worked with them so that we will be able to distribute using that platform to retailers. It will enable us to track how many people have taken it, how they've done, and so forth. So we're excited about that. It's a very big project to get all of our video lottery retailers to take this training and to pass it along not just to a key person but to the frontline staff, which is our goal. So we're working on developing the assets for this training. That is video, scenarios, audio, and illustrations. All are going to be worked on in next month, November. We will be sharing at a partner meeting with our partners where we are with this in December. And then probably one of the most important things to getting this fielded and adopted is we will be bringing in our video lottery retail advisory panel, and that's 21 of our most prominent, influential, and high volume video lottery retailers, and collectively they represent 279 retail locations. So we're going to have them come in, and we're going to use their employees for user testing and for the pilot of testing this particular training to make sure people can take it, understand it, and benefit from it. And that'll be happening in January and February. So next, there we go.
Hey, good morning, everybody. This is Mark Strickler from the Oregon Lottery. I wanted to give you an update on some work in progress right now that we're doing on responsible gambling television. Last week we shot 4 new commercials that will actually begin in December. And in the past, our responsible gambling had been really centered around playing responsibly, set a time limit, set a budget, only play for fun. What we want to do this time is take it a step further and actually attack some of the myths attached to gambling, and in particular with the video lottery terminals. So we shot 2 commercials on the premise of hot machine, which basically there's no such thing as a hot machine. Every outcome is random, and the odds are already dictated. So it's a very open campaign in so much that we're saying, look, the odds are what they are. There is no magic to this, and we want people to keep their entertainment entertaining. The second two commercials that we did were on how you play. That basically there's nothing that you can do. This isn't a game of skill. There is nothing that you can do that'll impact the outcome of the game. Every game is random. So we have, you see one visual in the top, top left there. He's putting money back in his pocket. I know it's hard to tell from this. It may be looking like he's taking money out, but no, he's putting money back in, actually. And so we have a couple really great spots against that, whether it's individual actions that they do, bringing little charms, all the things that we see and you see players doing that thinking they're going to impact the outcome, and being very open and honest that, hey, there's really nothing you can do to impact the outcome. So that starts in December. A little bit later in our presentation, we'll go over our entire media schedule. Next slide, please.
Okay, so you see a picture here, and it's from the Korean Center on Gambling Problems, and you're probably wondering, why do we have that there? And really, it's there because it was something that was brought to our attention by Greta about something essentially the Korean Council had done to share with all their stakeholders the facts and the landscape and the issues faced by problem gamblers in Korea. And so what we've done, the Oregon Council on Problem Gambling, lotteries taking a project leader role, is developing a definitive resource guide that will provide all of our stakeholders with current, accurate, timely information on the gambling environment in Oregon, including what the prevalence is, and that will be based on the results of the study that if Tom Moore was able to speak in this conference, and I see by the chat that he's not, would probably tell us is almost out of the field. And then also we'll talk about what we do for prevention and what our treatment efforts are and what resources are available to people. So this is a hand-in-hand project we're all going to be working on together, and timing trying to get it available so that we have it as we move into the next year's legislative session, so we can share it with interested legislators and other stakeholders. Next slide, please.
The next thing we're looking at is, it is a work in progress. It's some new collateral and merchandising to go along with our Play Responsibly, Keep Your Entertainment Entertaining campaign. And what this does, and we're looking to put this up in all of our locations, and certainly we can make them available for other places too. It is an acrylic holder. It can be wall-mounted or self-standing, and what's neat about it is it has a little business card holder. And so what we've done to go along with this campaign of Play, Pause, Stop is we've developed a little business card that goes in there that has information on OPGR, the helpline, GamTalk, and really anything, no matter where you are in the spectrum of gambling, whether you need to slow down or get treatment, we've got all the information that you can take with you. And our plan is to deploy this and have it up in all of our retailers to coincide with National Problem Gambling Awareness Month in March. I think we'll get it out before that, but that's at the latest of what we're doing. So it's a new display unit. What was neat about this one is, we talk about collaboration. It was an idea that came from one of the treatment providers and someone who works in the problem gambling community. So we do listen and we do implement. Next slide, please. Give you a brief media update, and this is probably an eye chart, but just wanted to highlight what we have going on now in October and a little bit into January. What's great about this is we have 10 total weeks of television against both problem and responsible gambling, and they're at high levels. And what I mean by high levels is we run just as much advertising against these efforts when we're on a weekly basis as we do the product advertising, because we know that there's critical reach and frequency levels that we need to hit on a weekly basis to get people to understand the message and act on the message. So rest assured, we're not throwing stuff out there just to say we are. No, we do it at levels that are significant enough to make a difference. For responsible gambling, starting next week, we will be on every game. We've run that before. And then starting really November 30th and into December, we'll be on the new Gambling Myths campaign. We just shot it last week. Would have liked to have it on next week, but there's no way we're going to get that edited down in time. Along with responsible gambling, we have a digital buy that extends from mid-October all the way through to January. For problem gambling, our award-winning bowling night commercial has 6 weeks of television between October through January, so a whole lot of television to coincide with this time of year when we start to see gambling levels increase. We have Hispanic radio against this too, and one of the things that we heard loud and clear from the providers is, hey, give us some help in the rural areas. And so we have a rural radio network that we've put together. We have 2 weeks of it in December, and as we go into 2016, we'll look to add a bunch more. But this gets to the folks out in the hinterlands that, you know, hey, treatment is available, and it's available in the county that you live in. And here's the number to call. We have a digital buy against it, and we never stop at the bottom of that with our SEM, our keyword advertising. So basically, we're on every single week of the year with digital advertising against problem gambling. We don't stop. And I think when we look at the numbers and we understand the numbers growth and clicks to the website and whatnot, you'll see that that's a strategy that's paid off for us. Next slide, please. This is, oh, you're already on it. Awesome. This is a quick update on GamTalk, and over there on the right side, it kind of shows how a GamTalk ad comes up. This one was off of a humor website called Cracked, but you can see that, you know, we know that that's a site that people who gamble they frequent. We have that kind of analytics, and we know that we had in August almost 15,000 sessions on GamTalk from Oregon, which is outstanding. And the chart on the left is just 1 week. And what's neat about this is with this 1 week that I'm showing you, that 72% of the folks were new users. So this is, you know, it's something we explored, we talked about, and we've gone into. And this is really kind of an online GA meeting that people can go on right then, right now, 24/7, and be able to talk to another person who's in recovery and get some insight on that. So it's a stopgap before treatment, but it's definitely picking up, and we're really excited and surprised by these high numbers. Next slide, please. Clicks to the website. We're still compiling all of our September stuff, so I thought I'd just show you how we've been doing. In July, we had over 26,000 clicks to the opgr.org webpage, and in August, wow, we really increased that to over 37,000. And what's neat about this is, you know, 2/3 of these people are new visitors. So we are breaking through to the people who are looking for information, looking for help. It's not, you know, not just the returning visitor. So I think, you know, we did have a downturn there in June. We're still trying to figure that out, but the good thing is all of our numbers are going up, and you can see over the course of time having that continuity strategy of being on with our search engine marketing every single week has paid off in terms of our overall numbers. Next slide, please. From the Trigger campaign, these are just the numbers from July and August. Referrals to treatment, pretty flat, 64 and 63. Chats also pretty flat, but the calls in August were definitely up, 252 calls to the helpline. So, and that number, it stays, you know, relatively the same month to month. We see, and all these numbers really do, we see slight increases. We'll probably see some increases over I'd say November, December, January, because our television buy on bowling nights is a little bit higher. Next slide.
So this is all work in progress or things that you will see or have seen, but we are always working on what's next. So we have won awards for the bowling night, which means we now need to extend that campaign, and we'll be producing an evolution of that, and hopefully it too will be effective and award-winning. So we'll be looking to do that early in the new year. And then in addition to doing retailer training, we will turn our attention to training our employees. And that is every employee of the Oregon Lottery, not just those who have customer-facing interactions. And then actually, in fact, today we're talking with Janine Robinson, and who is helping us add more and more RG enhancements to OregonLottery.org. We just recently relaunched our new consumer-facing site, and we up-leveled and increased the amount of RG content, and we have a commitment to continuing to do that throughout the coming year. So those are all things we're working on, and we'll likely be reporting on to you at a all providers meeting in the not-too-distant future. And I think that is all except for questions, and I think we like you, Greta, will defer questions till the end.
Okay, so I was going to unmute people, but as you could see, it got a little noisy when I did that. So I'm going to try to unmute people, but if they end up being really loud when I unmute them, I'm going to mute them back up again. So we'll see how this goes. But I did want to say thank you for the presentation. It was really informative, and it looks like we have a lot of great things that we're going to hear about and see in the very near future, so that's really exciting. And then also just wanted to say congratulations on the awards that the lottery won. It's always great to be recognized for all the great work that you guys do. As we know, it's a lot of work and a lot of time. So with that said, I am able to
start making some phone.
I am able to unmute some of you. Some of you are on the phone and I can't unmute. So if you can't be heard, please. Sorry, I'm trying to figure out which people are noisy and which people aren't. If you can't be heard, then please just chat in the box and I'll read your questions for you.
Oh my God.
So, do you have any questions for the Oregon Lottery? For those of you that are unmuted, I'm working down my list. Let's see. I don't appear to have any questions for the lottery right now. So, if you guys have any questions later, why don't we just go ahead and email me, and I can send those to the lottery, and we can get those answered for you. So once again, Stacy and Mark, thank you for that presentation. If you want to stay on the line, feel free to do that. But we're going to move on to our next presenter, which is Tom Moore and Jeff Marotta. So let me unmute you guys and mute Stacy and Mark again. And so Jeff and Tom, you should be ready to go.
Well, thank you, Greta, and good morning, everybody. So, Greta, in terms of slide advancement, just let you know, or do I have control of the slide?
No, just let me know.
Okay, so as you can see from this slide, we're going to talk about what is fantasy sports, what's the concern, and what we're going to do about it. And I'm trying to remember that. Go ahead and advance, please.
Okay.
Okay, so what is it? And I should start by saying what I put down here is just things that I gathered off the web because I am not a fantasy sports player. But the basic concept is that players compete against others by building a team of professional athletes from a particular league, and they earn points based on statistical performance. So this is basically computers that collect information on actual performance, and then they spit out how these fantasy teams did based on the games of that. It started with the games of the season. Now it's moved into more activity around daily fantasy sports, which are games of a particular weekend, or sometimes it's even a shorter period. It could be a day. And you could read this, but what I'm wondering here, is there anybody online or on this webinar that actually does fantasy sports that can kind of describe it from an actual user perspective? And Greta, I don't know if we're okay with unmuting people to get that.
I could unmute somebody if they respond that they are. We could do that. Like I have Julie Hines. Oh, I have Bob Harold. Let me go ahead and unmute him. And then I also have Julie Hines, who's done it as an experimental perspective. So let me go ahead and unmute those two, and then we'll open them up. So just give me 1 minute.
Sure. And so what you, as we're kind of setting that up, you kind of read that kind of what daily fantasy sports are. The interesting thing about it is just the amount of acceleration that has occurred around popularity, around the amount of revenues that these games are now producing. And let me know when folks are online. You can
I've unmuted Julie and Bob, so they should be able to speak.
So why don't you guys just describe a little bit about it in terms of what would a user experience if they go to engage fantasy sports play?
Well, the daily fantasy sports, either it's a FanDuel or a DraftKings, and what you're doing is betting X amount of dollars on a fantasy football team that you put together, which could be usually select a quarterback out of the 32 quarterbacks that are available, 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, a tight end, a kicker, and defensive team. You're given a fake amount of money, like you have $60,000 to a pool to buy these players, and you could, out of that $60,000, a quarterback may be worth $9,000, a good wide receiver would be worth $8,000, etc. So you create a team using this $60,000 budget, and then you decide which daily fantasy sports you're going to enter. There are some that you can bet anywhere from $2 to $25 or even more, and hundreds of thousands of people enter it, and the payout of that, if you win, is going to be huge. Or you can enter ones that if you fill maybe only 56 people enter it, but if you're in the top 20 or 25, you're going to double your money. If you bet $5, you're going to win $10. So there's a lot of permutations on the style of betting, but how you choose the team, it's pretty much the same way. So you have a different team every week. And the reason it's called a skill game is because you have information about which player is going to do well against certain defenses, or this kicker does really well indoors, or whatever. It's not just exclusive to football. They do it for basketball, hockey, baseball, all sorts of sports, but football tends to be the biggest one.
All right, thanks.
I don't know if that made sense.
Yeah, I found it very helpful. I hope everybody else did.
Jeff.
Yeah, go ahead.
Jeff, I was just going to add that Julie Hines is having difficulty with her microphone, so she just wanted to say that Bob covered that really well, but she wanted to add that it's allegedly free to enter, but you actually have to make a deposit of money in order to enter. And then it also includes the MMA, Canadian football, NASCAR, golf, and other sports also. Go. That's it.
All right, and go ahead and move on to the next slide. Okay, so one of the, again, one of the very interesting things about daily fantasy sports is just how it's really come onto the scene as something that has become very popular and very, very present. Anybody who's watched football recently, live football, has seen the advertisements for these for different companies that offer, especially FanDuel and what's the other big one, that offer these games. And what opened the door to this was the 2006 Congress passed an Unlawful Internet Gambling Enforcement Act. And it specifically said that fantasy sports games are legal as long as they reflect skill. Now, the interesting thing about this is if you look at some of the definitions, the legal definitions of gambling and games of chance, it appears that most states define gambling in a way that these wouldn't be considered legal. However, what's happening is they're not kind of getting challenged in any way. There was an interesting article I just read on, let's see, what was that? Wired magazine that came out, and it talks about how there's these states are applying these 4 different types of gambling tests to varying degrees to determine whether or not fantasy sports is legal. And if one really looks at these tests, it's in most states, especially these the 12, which Oregon's one of them, defines gambling or games of chance in a way where if there is it's called a material test, where if chance has more than an incidental effect on the game should be considered illegal. That's Washington has that, and Washington has a gaming commission that has ruled that fantasy sports does in fact constitute gambling, and has and there is, I believe, some kind of legal or lawsuit over this, and hence it's become illegal. But in most states, what we're finding is that there's really there needs to be kind of pressure. It usually comes from legal cases in order for a state to really take a position on the legality of it. So it's and there's been some interesting activity around the U.S., like in Nevada recently, where their gaming commission has also viewed it as a form of gambling, and therefore one that should require a license according to their state regulations. There's a lot of activity around legality. The feds are kind of getting involved in this as well. So we'll have to kind of wait and see how this whole thing plays out. Let's see, and next slide. Okay, so what's the concern? So the concern with daily fantasy sports is it's a very fast-growing segment of the gaming industry. Now, somebody who's in daily fantasy sports providers would not say that they're part of the gaming industry. However, many would believe that they are. And the number of people that are participating is really quite high. We're talking about 57 million people this year as an estimate, and it's gaining in popularity quite a bit, as you see from the slide. 37% increase since 2013. There's a lot of money kind of going into the market or going into into these games. 1.2 billion. And in terms of like the big concern, when you actually look at how much money is being wagered, if you will, on fantasy sports, it's relatively small compared to other forms of gambling. However, it's attracting a demographic group that has kind of shied away from more traditional forms of gambling, and that is kind of young adults. So if you go into casinos these days, you don't see a lot of young players. Same thing with a lot of lottery products. So it's a concern in the broad gaming industry is this aging demographic of kind of core players, and how do you bring new players into the activity in order to kind of keep your company, if you will, or your revenues kind of moving in the direction you'd want to as a growth company. So what fantasy sports is doing is actually found a way to engage the young players in a form of again, what many would consider gambling. Now, this is a relatively new phenomena in terms of the popularity of it. As we saw, it's really only been around for the past few years in terms of the degree of kind of advertising and popularity. So we don't know exactly what this means in terms of are people who are going to engage in fantasy sports betting, if they're going to move on to other forms of gambling. There has been some studies, and this is, again, a very kind of new field, so there's not a lot of studies out there. There was one that recently came out, and what they did is they looked at a group of college students. There was over, let's see, there was 1,556 college students kind of sampled on an online health survey. And what they found is that 11.5% of them participated in fantasy sports. And this is Martin and Nelson. It's in the Journal of Addictive Behaviors. And when they looked at correlation between people who engaged in fantasy sports play and gambling-related problems, they did find a correlation, especially among males. What they found was males who played fantasy sports for money and females who played fantasy sports for money or not were more likely to experience gambling-related problems. So this is just one study, and I think there's going to be many more coming through the pipeline, but it suggests that we do have something to be concerned about, we being the folks in the concerned about public health and certainly in the problem gambling field, that by this larger pool of kind of especially young people engaging in this activity, that that may lead to an increase in problem gambling. But again, the jury's still out on this, so we don't know for sure. Let's see, another concern is that money that is kind of going into this sports might be moving some revenue away from state lotteries and casinos, and also putting a damper on other forms of spending. So basically, the idea there is people only have kind of so much discretionary income. Individuals choose where they're going to spend their discretionary funds, and if it moves into basically this area, it's going to kind of deplete other areas where they may spend. Now, the unregulated business is interesting, and that's kind of come up recently when there's been some controversy over one of the kind of insiders in, I can't remember again if it was FanDuel, but one of the larger providers of daily fantasy sports, where they won a lot of money by wagering on a competitor site. And kind of what's the other issue around fairness and basically unregulated things. There was somebody went back, this is a couple of years ago, and kind of looked at one of these big companies, I can't remember, as FanDuel, basically allowed this investigation into their data. And what they found is there's a very small percentage of players are winning the lion's share of the revenues. So it's quite small. So it's something and I don't have the study right in front of me, but something like less than 10% of the players are account for over 80% of the prizes. And when they looked into how this is happening, what they're finding is if somebody is betting kind of large amounts and basically creating a whole bunch of different teams, fantasy teams, they have a much higher chance of winning the larger pools. And so what's happening is there's this segment of players out there that's kind of figuring this out, that the more the more teams they develop, the more they play, the better their chances of actually are kind of winning. But they have these very large swings where somebody can lose very easily, and this is like a college student could very easily lose like $20,000-$30,000 a weekend, but the next weekend they may more than make up for that. And so and on the flip side of that, it means that the more common player who's only betting, you know, $5, $20 or something like that, maybe forming one fantasy team, their odds of actually kind of winning the large prizes are very, very small because of these other kind of whales that are out there. Anyway, I could look up that article and maybe give it to Greta if anybody's kind of interested in kind of reading more about that as well. So, so those are some of the concerns. You know, we don't know how many are going to convert into being problem gamblers, what kind of impact this is going to have kind of generally in terms of the overall kind of gambling landscape out there. And this unregulated piece is, right now it's up to the companies to do a lot of self-regulation because this is just such a new beast, and regulators are actually trying to get their arms around it as we speak. See, next slide. And I think this is Tom's. Tom, are we able to hear you?
I don't know. Can you?
Okay.
I'm awake. Hi, everybody. This is Tom Moore. Thanks, Jeff. That was a great introduction to that. I'm, as you are, I'm just learning about this thing. What I want to do is just spend a couple minutes talking about what's been happening both at the national level and here in Oregon from the National Council on Problem Gambling and the Oregon Council on Problem Gambling. And just this month, a couple weeks ago, the National Council came out with a formal resolution on fantasy sports. And as Jeff talked about, that they're regulated in some states, not regulated in other states. Not some states consider it gambling, some states don't consider it gambling. And as Jeff said, we look back at our prevalence studies, and we know that young males and skill-based gambling tend to have higher incidence rates of problem gambling than older males. So there's certainly that high-risk demographic that Jeff talked about, and the frequency of the games, and as Jeff talked about, that it's daily play. One of the big things that is not getting a lot of attention is that partners and investors in these fantasy sports include the sports leagues themselves, professional teams, the owners of the professional teams, and as well as large public and private companies. So we've got this new dimension of folks moving into an area that is, some people, like we've said, don't consider it gambling, but other people do consider it gambling. Next slide, Greta. The first thing, a lot of people may not understand where both counts, the National Council and the Oregon Council are. Because our table, we have everybody, industry, prevention, treatment, and concerned citizens at our table, both the national level and at the local level. We don't take a position on whether or not gambling should be legal or not. But what the resolution talks about at the national thing is that the companies offering fantasy sports should develop gambling-related consumer protections, especially on these websites. So that's one of the things that the National Council will be moving forward on at the national legislative level. The other thing is that the National Council urges the participants to understand, and this is a tough nut to crack, I think, to understand that playing these fee-based fantasy sports may increase their risk of gambling addiction and protect themselves accordingly. I think it's like Mark was talking about, a lot of the myths about playing games and Lucky Charms and that kind of stuff. There's a lot of myths about whether or not you can handicap these teams and actually win. And as Jeff talked about, with a small percentage of people making large wins, there seems to be a way to actually game the game. So it's really a lot of concern about it being unregulated. Next slide. The council members at the Oregon Council have been concerned about this. And last month, we actually began the formal conversation of looking at fantasy sports. And I have to laugh. If it quacks like a duck and walks like a duck, it must be a duck. sorry for you Beaver fans. Informal consensus is that it certainly meets the definition of gambling. I mean, horse racing, handicapping horse racing is considered gambling. So there's, you know, I don't think that there's anybody on our council that sees even a gray area whether or not it's gambling. The concern at the local level is it's unregulated. There is extremely heavy advertising. I don't know whether any of you have been hit by the advertising, and it may be because I manage the council site and have some publications floating around the internet that says gambling on them with my email. But I normally get 10 to 20 ads for fantasy sports gambling a day as spam into our system. So there's a lot of advertising, and I've noticed a lot of heavy advertising on television. And there are absolutely, as Jeff kind of mentioned, there are absolutely no consumer protections in place. So it's we're on the agenda for the next regular meeting in November to develop a resolution for that. Again, we can't take a position on whether it is or it should be legal, but we can certainly take a position that it is gambling. And we can do what we can to educate the legislators to at least create an awareness to start paying attention to this. Because again, as Jeff said, if it continues to be as big as it appears, the wave as big as it appears it's going to be taking money from the tribes and money from the lottery, the schools and stuff like that. One thing that we did do, a little bit of foresight, is that we included the fantasy sports questions on the adult prevalence study. So this will be one of the first times that we'll be able to actually look at the possibility of connecting the fantasy sports with other gambling behaviors with the different folks. And we also included a whole section on what's called social gaming, and I don't want to get into that at this point. So this study, we are, as Stacy mentioned, we came out of the field last week. I'm waiting for the clean data to get to me so we can start analyzing. It's going to be a little bit of time so we can sort through all the data. We did end up with 1,500 respondents to the telephone survey and over 1,000 respondents to a web-based survey that we did as a pilot test. So we've got gobs and gobs of data to go through. So we'll be looking at that and seeing what comes out to have maybe some empirical evidence that we can use to educate the legislators. Next slide. Jeff? Let me jump in here. Jeff can be the bulldog because of my position on the council. I can't be the bulldog. So go get him, Jeff.
Okay. So what do we do about how do we respond to this this wave of daily fantasy sports popularity? Well, one way, and we talked about this in Voices of Problem Gambling Recovery meeting last night, is we can look for, and when I say we, this is the Voices group, can look for a sponsor to create legislation that could prohibit it. Right now, that is something that is being explored. There's no, we don't have a sponsor right now. We don't have anything kind of written up. It's just an exploration right now. But that's certainly something that the Voices group is looking at. Let's see, and then the OHA. This is really more Greta, your bullet. But OHA can elect to officially recognize daily fantasy sports wagering as gambling, and if that is done, then the problem gambling service system funds for the problem gambling service system can be used to intervene on the treatment and prevention efforts. And Greta, has that been done?
No, we haven't actually recognized it. I didn't even think that it needed to be recognized until I went to the council meeting and found out that this wasn't even considered gambling. But I think that our office would take the same position as the council, and we would consider this gambling, and therefore we would serve those that come in for services.
Okay. Yeah, and that's another thing that Voices talked about last night is there is a full consensus within that group that it definitely is gambling and should be viewed as such. So that's something that could be done if any of you on the treatment side, and also all of you, treatment or prevention, there could be things that you can do to address this. If somebody comes in with a daily fantasy sports issue, it sounds like you can treat them and be reimbursed for it. And on the prevention side, certainly integrate the conversation of daily fantasy sports into efforts that you're conducting. And then really any other ideas, any specific interventions, and this is something for a question for all of you, is kind of how might you be able to address this, considering that that you are able to under the problem gambling service system.
So maybe that's just something for people to ponder, or they can type in other ideas that they have and we can share those. Just from my last experience of unmuting people, there was a lot of background noise, so I don't really want to unmute people anymore. So if you do have any questions for Jeff or Tom about this topic or any specific interventions or ideas, please feel free to just use your chat box and chat and send those comments into us, and we will share those either on this webinar today or through an email later.
Right, I guess next slide.
So if you have any questions, feel free to just enter into your chat box on the window on the right-hand side of your screen that you can pop out, and I'll share those with Tom and Jeff, and we can get those answered. But just in respect of time, I'm just going to continue on with the webinar and start our next presentation. Thank you, Tom and Jeff, for addressing this issue and sharing information about it with us. Okay, Tom, you're up. Take it away.
Okay. Make sure I got myself off mute. Some more boring numbers, except these aren't boring numbers. These are pretty exciting stuff. And I want to say one thing. And Greta, being an insider coming in to manage the programs, knows her way around the new what are we calling it now? Oregon Health Systems Division. Anyway. She has got some access to some data that is just, it's really, really exciting, and I'm going to just kind of touch that towards the end of this little segment. But before I get there, I want to talk about some ads because we've been working very closely with the lottery too. So next slide, Greta. You all know me, so you all know you're going to get some very confusing looking graphics. This is just a presentation of the data and kind of a visual of the data. What we were able to get, the lottery gave us all the runs when they ran their ads, the powder room ad and the bowling night ad, and then when they ran the Spanish radio ads and when they ran the general radio ads. And then what we were able to do was to take the helpline calls and also look at enrollment. So this is for the entire fiscal year, last fiscal year, 14-15. You can see some spikes there in the calls, and you can see some spikes there in the enrollments, and the numbers down there are just kind of the weeks that we looked at. We had the powder room ran for 14 weeks, and the bowling night ran for 20 weeks. And we had some interesting differences. Go to the next slide. We'll get to the kind of the findings of this. And something that I didn't really realize, that with the powder room ads, what we saw was there was a statistically significant increase in the number of calls that came in over the periods of no ads. So from that, we know that that the powder room was actually having some impact of driving people to the telephones. The calls also increased significantly with the bowling night ad, and those calls increased over the powder room ads and also significantly over the no ads. Now you notice that there's a 50 behind the powder room and there's a 75 behind the bowling night BN. What those are, and I'm probably going to get this terminology wrong, and if Mark's still listening or Stacy, I'll get corrected afterwards, but that has to do with saturation of the ad in that time period. So it's really interesting that we had a less saturation with the powder room and heavier saturation with the bowling night. So with the powder room, we saw the calls increase, but enrollments didn't significantly increase over the no ad periods. However, with the bowl, I'm all backwards anyway here. With the bowling night, and I see there's a mistake there, with the bowling night at 75% saturation, the number of enrollments increased significantly over powder room and also over the no ad. So it's sort of a lesson, and I was just really delighted to see Mark's slide where the bowling night ads that they've got running for this next period are all at that 75% saturation point. So that's exciting. I think we need to brace ourselves for some really increased enrollments coming in there. One of the things, a couple things we looked at, the no ad period also included the winter holidays where enrollments are typically fall off, excuse me. But what we did is I cut off the last week, which really made, usually there's nothing happens during that last week of December, and that made no difference. We also, there was some question because Enact had been doing some special stuff in their program and had increased their enrollments. So what I did is I also, in doing the analysis, I pulled out their enrollments to make sure that wasn't influencing the extent of the impact of the ads, and there was no impact there. The Spanish ads, the numbers are so small that we didn't see any significant difference between the ads and no ads. But again, looking from a statistical perspective, that's kind of a no finding one way or the other because the numbers are usually so small. And the other thing that happened during that year was that March was Problem Gambling Awareness Month, so there was some additional intervening variable of that activity that was going on. But it does my old heart good to see that the ads are back and that the ads are having some impact, and we can demonstrate that they're having impacts. And if Stacy's still on, congratulations on all the awards. But I think our data showing that it's actually getting people into treatment is better than any award that we could ever have. And thank you to the lottery for those ads. Next slide. Okay, back to Greta. Greta and her data. She was able to access the Health Systems Division. I might have trouble with that for the rest of my life. Looking at alcohol and drug mandated and volunteer client enrollments, and we compared those with problem gambling outpatient treatment enrollments. And what I did was we looked back for about 10 years, and I took fiscal year 03-04 as baseline. And so this chart is really a percentage difference from baselines, not actual numbers. My expectation, interestingly, was that I thought our problem gambling services enrollments would parallel the volunteer enrollments in the state alcohol and drug system, and they didn't. What they did do was they did parallel the mandated clients in the state A&D system. So I don't know what that means. We're still kind of chewing on that and processing that. But again, with Greta able to get this data to us, so we can start doing this analysis, we can start looking at what's happening, at least in the A&D system at this point. So if any of you have any ideas of why we might parallel or trend more closely to mandated clients, send me an email and let me know what your insight is, because I think it's fascinating that we have this data and we can track it. And it's, in our enrollments, when you look at the green line there, our enrollments really in 07, 08, well, actually from 6 to 9, really dipped down, where mandated and volunteer clients didn't dip down. Volunteer clients actually went up a little bit in 07, 08 as a percentage over baseline. So again, a big thank you to the Office of Health Analytics for that data and some more data. Next slide, Greta, please. One of the things that we've sort of been asking ourselves, well, are our gambling clients being seen in the state system for A&D services and mental health services? So what we did was we took the enrollments for about the past 10 years, 10,600 enrollments, and gave those over to the Health Analytics Department, and they were able to go into the A&D data and also the mental health data. So out of those 10,600 gambling enrollments, 19%, a little over 19% of those folks also were receiving A&D services at the time of their enrollment in gambling, which, you know, what's that mean? Well, to me, it sort of means probably those agencies that are well commingled are sharing their clients with A&D, or somebody's going into the A&D and getting gambling clients out. So there's something going on, but it certainly reinforces a lot of the hypothetical stuff that we've been saying about the number of people, problem gamblers, also having problems with alcohol and drugs. But this is just, you know, the public sector A&D services. Out of that 10,600, almost 2,000, 1,964, 18.5%, also received mental health services. So again, our focus seeing mental health services, and we actually have the data. We can go back in and actually look at agencies once I get enough time with all these prevalence studies and the annual report to go back in and look at that, and to confirm that if in fact these folks are being seen in the agencies that are really commingled with the mental health and addictions and problem gambling services. Out of that bunch, 856, or about 8%, received both alcohol and drug and mental health services. So this is, you know, if this doesn't get you guys excited, then you're probably in the right job. It gets me excited, and I think that you know, as we're looking at doing client outreach and marketing and that kinds of stuff, more of this data that Greta's getting for us, I think that's going to be able to help us in really defining our plans for case finding. Next slide, Greta, please.
Tom, can I just clarify one thing about your last slide?
Yes.
I think that what you meant to say, or maybe this is how you said it, but I heard it incorrectly, is that of the clients that received A&D and mental health services, or both, those clients had received those services within that 10-year period, and had also received problem gambling services within that 10-year period. So they didn't have to be receiving them both exactly at the same time. I don't think that the health analytics team had reviewed it that way. They had reviewed it as in that 10-year period.
Okay. Thank you. Then this slide, what they went back in and looked in the past 10 years at people that had gone into the alcohol and drug or mental health system with and received diagnosis of problem gambling or pathological gambling, but those encounters were not in the problem gambling system. So this is in the A&D and mental health system. So in 2003, there were 25 individuals that received at somewhere in the long line of potential diagnostic categories that had problem gambling, pathological gambling diagnosis, and 45 folks that had primary, or it was their primary or secondary diagnosis. So you can see over the years that the number of folks coming in to the A&D and mental health systems are having being diagnosed with primary or secondary gambling issues. Now again, when we look down at for 2013, the 446 folks that had a primary, secondary diagnosis of problem gambling were receiving services, A&D and mental health services. We don't know at this point whether those were actually clients that were also receiving services in the problem gambling system, and then at the co-occurring treatment in the mental health or A&D services. So it's kind of a coarse global look at that. But that's a lot of folks. That's a lot of folks in the system that have problem gambling diagnoses that are receiving alcohol and drug treatment. Again, we need to be able to at some point maybe bore down and see where this is happening. The other thing that, go ahead, next slide, Greta. The other thing that Greta was able to get was by billing providers. So this is just not A&D folks. This is anybody who's billing the state A&D and mental health system. Now that report is 27 pages long. I have not analyzed it. And for three target years, 2007, 2011, and 2013. And I just pulled out three examples that kind of got me thinking of boy, I'd like to get more information. And the Portland Adventist Medical Center in 2007, they had nine individuals that had a gambling diagnosis, 2014 and 2013, 12. Now, I don't know if there are any gambling providers that are associated with Portland Adventist Medical Center, or whether they're just being seen within that large agency. But again, you look at the number of claim counts, the number of claims were pretty small too. So essentially each person got about initial screening, but we don't know what happened to those people. The next one is a pediatrics office, and I'm just fascinated by that, by how is a pediatrics office getting to the point of diagnosing folks with problem gambling disorders. I don't know. I have no clue. I don't know how to get in there and get that. But again, it looks like for 2011, it was just a one session deal for the 9 people, and then in 2013 there were a couple sessions for some of the other people. The other thing that showed up too, and I picked on Cascadia Behavioral Health. This kind of I think, you know, we look at the number of encounters that those folks had, not necessarily the numbers 4 in 2007, 11 and 11 and 12 in 2013, but the number of encounters. And I think that if we were to bore down in that data, that would be the folks that were probably receiving gambling services that were also being treated downstairs in the mental health department or one of the other clinics. But this is just the kind of data that we're getting access to, that I think is just fascinating, and we'll be reporting on this further. Next slide. I think I'm done. Yep.
Okay. So once again, if you have any questions about the data, you can just ask them in the chat box, and I can read your questions out to Tom, or you can contact Tom directly and ask him any questions. But I think in future webinars and discussions, places of discussions, we're going to continue to talk about this data as Tom has more time to evaluate it and weed his way through it.
And one thing too, Greta, that Greta has accessed additional data that's outside the public sector data, and I haven't even had a chance to even partially digest that. So we've got a tremendous amount of data that I think is going to help to influence the program. Thank you.
Okay, so I don't have any questions, and just in respect of time, we're going to continue on because we have one more presentation by Jeff. So let me unmute him, and I'm going to mute you, Tom. Thank you. And Jeff, you're up.
All right, well, this is an exciting time. The 5-year PGS System Improvement Plan is out for your review. It's something that we've been working on for some time. And when I say we, it's all of us. I suspect that almost everybody on this call participated in the process the development process of this plan. And if you move forward, Greta, slide. And this is the project process. This is a review. We started with trying to figure out, well, what do we want to accomplish out of this? We went around in the discovery phase, and this was last year, and talked to a number of you through interviews. We collected surveys for anybody who wanted to participate. Certainly looked at all the great data that Tom produces, and as well as kind of regulations and other program documentation. Then we went out and we held the community forums, where several of you may have participated in those, where we kind of talked about some of the major issues that the system was facing and how we might approach those. Came out with a number of possible solutions. A lot of it was brainstorming, very productive. It was also interesting to hear the different regions, the different ways that the different challenges that different regions had, as well as some very innovative ideas on how to address some of those challenges, leading to one discovery, that we just need to find better ways to share this information, because there's great ideas that many of you have and are implementing in various programs, and we need to find ways to kind of disseminate that so that everybody has an opportunity to learn from each other's experience. That moved into the development phase, which is what we just kind of came out of, and that was a lot of that was spending time with the executive team on the project, with Greta, Roxanne, myself, Nicole, kind of looking at all this data that was collected through the discovery and discussion phases to basically come up with the plan. And right now we're in the vetting stage, so it's out there. We're seeking comments. We understand that in order to really hone this document down and to develop the best plan, that we need everybody to have an opportunity to look at it and let us know how it can be improved upon or changed. And then this plan, which we'll talk about in a little bit, it's a high-level view of the system and where the system can improve upon. And implementing it is going to really come down to a finer level of detail. One that we didn't want to create. We wanted to create a document that was usable, that could be viewed by the public as an informational piece about the system, as providing an overview of where the system is heading and how it's going to develop. We didn't want to get too much into the weeds with this document, because if we did, it would become something that's much harder for the general user to maybe grasp, and they could get kind of caught up in some of the finer details and kind of miss some of the large, big picture pieces of it. And so it was written from this kind of high-level view. And in order to actually do the implementation piece, it's going to need additional work through the development of work plans, and within these work plans, this is going to fall largely on Greta and Roxanne. They have a lot of work ahead of them, thanks to this plan. And that is to develop these work plans and basically phase in the implementation. So next slide. So again, it's really developed as this high-level summary of improvement efforts. It's going to take place over a 5-year period. It's going to serve as a roadmap to the development of the system. And the way that it was approached was, we have a really good system, that there's a lot of good things that are happening. There has been a lot of work in the development of the system to date. And it's based on how do we continue doing what we do well, and where are those areas, where are there gaps in the system, and how do we fill those gaps. And so those are the two basic areas that it focuses on, is how do we build on what we've done, and how do we address identified gaps. Next slide. Now, one of the things that occurred as we were developing this plan is we didn't have a mission. There was Oregon Health Authority has a mission, but the Problem Gambling Service Program had not. And missions are just mission vision statements are just so important when we look at strategic planning and we looking at kind of improvement planning, because they serve as a point of reference. It provides kind of the foundational support or guidance to a system in terms of providing that point on the horizon on where we want to work toward. And so what we realized is that we need to develop a mission and vision statement. And we didn't have these in concept form or in draft form at the time we went out and did the interviews, the time that we did community forums. So this is one part, perhaps the only part of the plan that hasn't been reviewed or discussed with all of you and the other stakeholders in the system. And so we wanted to spend just a little time reviewing the mission statement and gathering any input you have, or certainly alerting you that this is something new and an area that we would like folks to focus on as they review the broader work plan. So here's the draft mission as it stands right now. So the mission of the Oregon Health Authority's Problem Gambling Services is to support effective problem gambling prevention, education, treatment, and recovery programs, and supports to reduce the impact of problem gambling on individuals, families, and communities. The mission is accomplished by working in partnership with individuals and their families, counties, and other state agencies, providers, advocates, and communities to support the triple aim of Oregon health system transformation: better health, improve the lifelong health of all Oregonians; better care, increase the quality, reliability, and availability of care for all Oregonians; and lower costs, reduce or contain the cost of care so it is affordable for everyone. And the second section here, the triple aim, we felt it was important to include this because the Problem Gambling Service System certainly falls under the larger umbrella of Oregon Health Authority and Oregon's health transformation systems aspirations. And so this harkens back on that foundation. The next slide is the vision. Oregon Health Authority Problem Gambling Services envisions a healthy Oregon where problem gambling is prevented through a comprehensive system of programs and services. And again, this is the long-term vision. Some of you who are on the treatment side say, "Hey, what about treatment? How come that's not mentioned?" Well, ideally, in terms of a vision, this one was written as an ideal, where we want to get to a place where we're not having to treat people, that there is a strong enough education, strong enough programs and awareness where problem gambling is prevented. We'll see if we ever get to that vision, but I think it's good to have a very strong kind of ideal vision in order to work toward our best possible outcome. So those are I don't know, Greta, if you want to open up for comments at this point for that, but I know it's hard to do without getting a lot of background, and we're short on time. So definitely pay attention to those two and submit any suggestions you might have to change those if you feel they need to be changed. This is the plan. Again, what you see down here is the way it's kind of broken up. There's these 6 different areas of system improvement that we're focused on: collaboration, workforce development, integration, prevention, treatment, recovery, rural services, funding, and reimbursement. And you have this plan at the full plan, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time kind of going over it, because you'll be doing that on your own time or with greater detail when you have more time to do so. And next slide. So with that, we are kind of at the short on time here, so I just want to encourage everybody to provide written feedback and certainly review the plan. And let us know what you think about it, if you have any recommendations, just any comments one way or the other. And if you could email those to Greta by next Monday, that would be very much appreciated. Oh, and when you do so, this last point here, it's going to be helpful. Greta's and Roxanne are really kind of taking the point on this of collecting all this feedback, and we want to utilize it. And for us to be able to, I think, best utilize the feedback, it would be helpful if you reference specific sections or bullets within the plan that relates to your comments, so that, again, that we have, so that we're not kind of making any assumptions on the comments, but that they're actually going to be related back to specific areas where you think improvements needed. So the more specific, the better. And I think that's it.
Great. Thank you. So, yeah, so the plan is open for comment until Monday, and we are just having you respond directly to us, and we hope you feel comfortable with that. One of the reasons we didn't open an anonymous survey method to provide feedback was just because if we didn't really, just like with knowing where in the plan you're commenting on, we also would like to have the opportunity to, if we don't understand what your comment relates to go back and ask you for further details. So we hope that you're comfortable in providing us any feedback on this plan, and you will do that. So thank you, Jeff. That is the end of our webinar. It's a little bit after 10:30, so we ran over a little bit, but we did a really good job of staying on time since we had such a full agenda. Since it was so loud when I unmuted people, I'm not going to unmute them again, but if you do have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat box. We'll keep the webinar open for a couple more minutes, but if you have questions, you can also address them to Roxanne or myself, and here's our email addresses. And otherwise, we will go ahead and let you go for the rest of the day. Thank you to all our presenters today, and I hope all of you guys have a good rest of the week.